Hey, what's up everyone? This is Walter, and we're back with more crap from Reddit. Today we're going to be talking about bad dates. I'm no expert in dates myself, I'm more like, let's just get drunk, but these are the kind of dates that anyone could realize suck. The subreddit is Reddit Dating Hell, and it's described as, don't let that bad date go to waste, share all your cringy, nasty, gut-busting dating stories. Well, let's start reading with more horrific dates from Reddit. The worst Valentine's date. I've never really celebrated Valentine's Day or been with anyone that made much effort for the occasion. Needless to say, when the guy I had, keyword had, been dating booked a romantic weekend away for Valentine's Day, I was really looking forward to it. When we got to the hotel, he seemed really disappointed in the room and facilities. We went downstairs to the pool/spa where he complained there was no jacuzzi. There was no jacuzzi advertised for the hotel anyway, and demanded we received a free bottle of wine for the inconvenience. I was so embarrassed but determined not to let it ruin the night. While we're getting ready to go out, he insists I need to iron my off-shoulder top and starts ironing it for me, burning a huge hole in my blouse. I end up having to rip the sleeves off and improvising a sleeveless tube top. We go to a really nice restaurant for dinner, and I can't help but notice he is throwing the drinks back and considerably more drunk than me. I remember nudging him under the table a few times due to how rude he was to the staff, who were lovely. We end up in a pub, he is slurring his words and being all over me, and I have the worst gut feeling for no apparent reason. I was so on edge and just wanted to go back to the hotel. I ended up falling asleep first back at the hotel, and I wake up to him all over me, disgusting and not reciprocated. I notice he has ordered bottles of wine from room service and had been up alone drinking them. I'm still half asleep when I hear him mumbling under his breath angrily, making absolutely no sense. He is really annoyed and starts shouting in slurred words at me that I ruined the night and to pack my stuff, we're going home, and that he's leaving, going to get in the car and leave me here. It was early hours of the morning. He storms out the hotel room after throwing stuff around, but quickly comes back to tell me I was lucky he was drunk or he would be going into town to find a girl prettier than me. I start crying and attempting to calm him down when the fire alarm goes off. I throw on my pajamas and attempt to get him dressed, but he was in such a state that I couldn't. And I was panicking. Staff were knocking on the door trying to evacuate the floor. By the time we make it outside, everyone in the hotel is already there. It's raining and the fire brigade have to give him a foil blanket to keep warm. It's so obvious I've been crying. I have makeup all down my face. He is too busy verbally abusing the hotel staff and firemen to even notice that people are asking if I'm okay. I'm so beyond embarrassed. Eventually we get back to the room and he passes out. By the time he wakes up in the morning, I'm showered, packed, both of our stuff, and ready to go. We cut the weekend short, despite him wanting to stay another night. On the way home, he won't stop apologizing, saying how awful he feels, and due to not getting much response from me, pulls the car over and refuses to drive until I say I've forgiven him. For the next few weeks, he would leave flowers on my car, and even a Moonpig card. Best part. On the drive home, between the groveling, his boss calls and asks him to keep the receipts for the room service so they can be matched up with the hotel room. He had put the entire weekend on his company card and told them he was there for work. First off, I really hate that move where he pulls over and refuses to start driving until she says she forgives him. It doesn't really mean a whole lot if someone says something under duress. And the whole thing's really childish. It's obviously going to take time to forgive this. And yeah, the whole date was horrible. From reading Reddit comments, I can say without a doubt that the thing most women hate most on a date is being rude to the staff. And this guy was apparently a huge dick to everyone. I have been known to get drunk myself, so I won't speak too much on that. Most baffling reason a date went sour. It's been well over a decade, but I met a girl online who was majoring in opera. Messaged back and forth, very good conversation, moved to texting. I eventually asked if she'd like to get dinner. She said she'd been hoping I would ask. The first half of dinner went great. We'd been talking for weeks at that point, so there really wasn't a ton of awkward get-to-know-you talk. We were talking about her background in music, and I mentioned I was in marching band in college. She asked what instrument I played, and I said trombone. For some reason, it was like a switch flipped in that very moment. She suddenly was almost completely detached from the conversation. She thanked me for dinner at the end of the night, and we went our separate ways. No talk of a second date, but no talk of ending things either. I texted her the next day and said I had fun, honestly just trying to see if she had any interest in continuing anything. To put it bluntly, her texts from that point on were extremely mean. Like unprovoked, very harsh insults about the most random things. Before the date, communication had been very friendly and often very flirty. After 4 to 5 texts, I said it was obviously clear we wouldn't be seeing each other again. However, I did ask her point blank if her sudden 180 had anything to do with the fact that I played trombone. The turning point was just too obviously tied to that exact moment at dinner for me to ignore. I don't date trombone players. That was our final communication of any kind. Frankly, I was so perplexed I didn't even know what to say. Why in the world would the fact that I used to play a certain instrument make someone that hostile toward me? You know, I actually have no idea. Sometimes someone just wants an excuse, but you'd think you'd be able to tell if that was the case. The comments also don't really have an idea what happened. If you think you do, let me hear it in the comments. The algorithm loves that shit. Let's read another one though. Embarrassing movie date. When I was in high school, I had a punk friend I used to run into at shows a lot, and he was often with this really cute skinny guy with long hair named Billy. I always thought Billy was hot. Fast forward about 2 years after high school, I found out Billy and I were attending the same college. He asked me online if I'd want to meet up with him between classes, and I said yes. I didn't recognize him at first and apparently walked right past him. Eventually he texted me and figured out where I was so we could hang out in his car. I was incredibly disappointed. He looked nothing like he used to. He'd gained a lot of weight and cut his hair much shorter. I distinctly remember he was wearing ugly red pants that didn't fit his body well at all. They looked handmade in a bad way. He also kept talking about the fact that he had a Prince Albert, which I didn't care about. Oh man, how the hell do you casually bring up a dick piercing? You don't, right? You know in high school when someone first gets a tongue piercing and they have their mouth open a lot to show it off? Well, this is nothing like that. It is a pretty gentlemanly name for a piercing though, I suppose. When he asked me out on a date, I said sure, what's the harm in it? It was rare for anyone to ask me out on a proper date. He picked me up from my parents' house the next night and we went to the nearby theater about 7 minutes away. Unfortunately, once we got there, they wanted to see my ID for the movie, and I didn't have it on me, so we had to go back. He acted really annoyed and inconvenienced that I'd left my ID at home, even though it wasn't a far drive and we were pretty early. Anyway, we get back to the theater and see Strange Wilderness. This movie had been in theaters for a few weeks at this point, so the theater itself was near empty. It was just us, another couple, and an older dude by himself. Throughout the entire movie, Billy laughed at pretty much every single joke. Well, I wouldn't call it laughing. Really, it was more of a loud, high-pitched giggle. At first I thought it was fake, but he kept giggling like that. It was really off-putting. After a short while, it became obvious that the other 3 people in the theater were no longer laughing at the movie's jokes, but at Billy's laugh. It was that ridiculous. As the movie wore on, I got more and more embarrassed. I remember thinking to myself, I'm never seeing a movie with this guy again. Okay, I'd just like to point out that this movie has a 2% on Rotten Tomatoes, so I'm sure it was really worth laughing at. When we left the theater, he immediately turned to me and exclaimed, "Wow, that movie was awful. I didn't like it at all." What the fuck? Then why was he giggling consistently for the entire thing? I was super confused. When it came time for him to drop me off, he stalled in the driveway and asked me to make out with him. I told him no, absolutely not, because my dad was weird and would definitely be watching us from his office window. He completely ignored my request, put the car in park and started playing music. What did he put on? Barry fucking White. I couldn't believe it. This is in the same vein as saying I love you on a first date, except even more awkward if that's possible. What don't these people understand about a first date? So I awkwardly made out with him to Barry White in his dirty car in front of my parents' house. I felt the same embarrassment I'd felt when we were in the theater. It took everything in me not to burst out laughing. I have to assume somebody told him to put that music on for girls as a joke, but he took it seriously. For the record, he was also a terrible kisser. We hung out maybe twice after that, but never made out again or anything. I remember at one point we were in a cafe and he accidentally showed me pictures of his dick to show off the Prince Albert. He said, "Oh my god, I'm sorry about that," and I cluelessly replied, "Oh, don't worry, it was so fast I didn't see anything." I never saw or heard from him again after that year. I haven't been able to search him online, but I'm sure he'd be just as unrecognizable and uninteresting as before. Ah man, if you told her about your Prince Albert several times the first time really talking to her and she didn't say she wanted to see it, maybe she didn't want to see it. Probably expected that kind of move by then though. Yeah, the date sounded like a pretty cringy train wreck. I think I have time for another story, so one more. He poked my boob and invited me to his room. Yeah, that title definitely describes most of my dates. I was 24 at the time and had just gotten out of a relationship. I was a single mother, so I only had very small amounts of time I could go on dates and had a hard time meeting guys outside of dating apps due to my work schedule. I was also new to the dating thing, so I didn't really know the proper etiquette for these things. I matched with a guy on Hinge and we agreed to meet for coffee at a local Starbucks early in the day before I had to work later. Let's call him Steve. I showed up in casual summer clothes, it was like 80 degrees, and walked in to see my match was about 6'3", wearing dress clothes. I walked up to him and he boasted, "Oh wow, you're actually cute." Thanks, apparently he didn't anticipate the girl he was meeting up with for a date to be cute. We get in line to order and I mentioned grabbing something small to eat because I hadn't eaten anything yet. He replied, "Oh, I don't eat breakfast. Eating in the morning makes people fat. You really should look into the science." I rolled my eyes in my own head and intended to end the date early, but after we sat down with our coffee, he did manage to redeem himself a little with conversation. Steve tells me he's dressed up because he worked at a car dealership and was also going to work later. Later I realized it was a Sunday and car dealerships only stayed open until like 5 and it was noon, so I think he was lying now looking back. We decide to go for a walk. We walk through the parking lot and he mentions he has a kitten at home that he newly got and he needs to go home and check on him at some point. He asked if I wanted to go meet him. I was extremely hesitant to go, but he assured me that he also lived with family, so it wouldn't just be him, and he swore he'd bring me back to my car in time for work. So I agree and we get in his car and go. We get to the house and walk inside. There's almost nothing in there. The living room has 2 couches, 1 small TV on an end table, and a bunch of Magic the Gathering cards on the floor. He goes into the kitchen and brings me the kitten to hold and introduces me to his brother, who is playing video games in the kitchen. Yes, the kitchen. And has earphones on and has no clue I'm even there. Doesn't even look up. Steve and I go into the living room to sit and finish our earlier conversations. I sit on one end of the couch, thinking he'll sit on the other so we could talk and look at each other while conversing. Nope, he plops down directly next to me, puts his arm around me, pulls me into him, and starts petting my hair. I got really uncomfortable as I was really caught off guard. He felt my body language tense up and he said, "You need to relax, you're on a date and you're so tense." So we just kept talking. I mentioned something about my hormonal condition and he said, "That makes sense, these are big," and poked my boob. Obviously I wasn't exactly amused, but I was in a weird spot and didn't feel super safe to get confrontational, so I just asked where the bathroom was so I could have an excuse to create some physical distance. He showed me to the bathroom and I came out. I told him I needed to leave soon, to which Steve replied, "How do you know what time it even is? There are not clocks in here." Amazed that I used my phone. I sat back down on the opposite couch he was sitting on. He got up and moved to sit next to me and hold on to me again. He pulled my chin up and leaned in for a kiss. I decided I was going to take one for the team and get out of there. How bad could it be? Well, he opened his mouth so wide he literally bit my chin. Nope, I was done here. I told him I needed to go home right now. He asked me how long I had, and I said 15 minutes. He asked if I'd like to go upstairs to his bedroom to finish our conversation really quick. I decline. I have to go now. He drives me back to my car, kisses me bye, and texts me later asking to please have another date because we really connected. I said no thank you and blocked his number. I really hope he never behaves this way on a date again, and I am so grateful to be in a great relationship now and no longer dating. I especially like how he does something creepy and then blames her for being creeped out. I mean, this is like their first real physical contact, and here he is stroking her hair. Then she has to hurry out, and he has the balls to assume she wants to go upstairs for a quickie. It's hard to believe these people exist sometimes. Well, anyway, let me know what you think if you want, but that's about all the time I have for you today. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked the video, please give it a like. I can still see the dislikes, by the way, it's just everyone else who can't. If you have something to say, I hope you'll let me hear it. I do read my comments. Now, if you're new here and want more content like this, consider subscribing for more of the same. And big thanks also to my generous patrons. They help me out with direct support every month. I'll probably shout them out in the next Nice Guys video, which will be soon here. Lucas was being a nice guy again, so I definitely want to include that. Well, have a great night, everyone, and have confidence on your dates, but maybe not as much as some of these guys have.